WADR.
WADR.
West Africa Democracy Radio.
WADR. Promoting dialogue.
Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. This is NEWSLINK. Here are the top stories. The Malian government cancels the 62nd independence anniversary following the deteriorating security situation. 3 West African countries face indefinite suspension from all cooperative platforms by the French government, including issuance of visas. Deadly attack by suspected jihadist claims 8 lives at displaced persons camp in northern Burkina Faso, and Ghana becomes the regional and sub-Saharan African hub for modular nuclear reactor training.
Now, Ghana is in a pretty good position. You have a nuclear regulatory authority, so you are in a good position for this. But we are working with you to make sure that when that nuclear reactor is built, that it will be under those highest standards of safety, security, and safeguards.
Stay with us for details of these stories and more.
Here is Tawfiq Abdul Nasser with NEWSLINK.
Many thanks for joining us and a warm welcome to our listeners in the Gambia, Ghana and Liberia. The Malian transitional government has cancelled this year's independence anniversary over the deteriorating security situation and heavy losses in recent times. The ruling junta reached the decision this week at the end of the Council of Ministers meeting. During the meeting, Interim President Assimi Goïta instructed the use of funds meant for the festivities to assist families and victims of the series of recent attacks. As Imoredet reports, Mali will on September 22 mark 62 years as a sovereign nation.
The junta's suspension of this year's independence anniversary overlaps the rising tension between the state and ex-rebels in the north, while MINUSMA gradually withdraws from the country by closing and handing over bases. The Al-Qaeda affiliate jihadist network, known as the Support Group for Islam and Muslims (GSMIM), is making a comeback with renewed attacks on communities. Hundreds of people, including civilians and security operatives, have been killed in recent times in Timbuktu and Gao. Displacement has risen to as much as 300,000, with several communities under blockade by terrorists denying them access to humanitarian aid. In the timeline of recent attacks, Tuareg armed separatist groups on Tuesday launched an offensive against army position in the garrison town of Burem. Although the army said it repelled the attack, dozens of deaths were recorded on both sides. Last week, an attack on a passenger boat on the Niger River blamed on jihadists resulted in more than 50 deaths. Colonel Goïta has expressed deep distress at the losses and described the attack on the boat as well as in Bamba, Gao and Burem town as barbaric. Recall, Mali has been fighting insurgency since 2012 after separatist and Islamist insurrections broke out in the north.
Imoredet reporting there. Meanwhile, 3 French former colonies are immediately suspended from any form of cooperation and support with French institutions. The directive through the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs includes the issuance of visas and affects Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger. The communication states that the suspension involving all cooperation and projects with institutions of nationals of these 3 countries must be suspended without delay and any exception. More details with Marty C.
The French Minister for Europe and Foreign Affairs said the indefinite suspension of cooperation with Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger include financial support and issuance of visas. The trio are currently ruled by the army, which removed their democratic governments. After the coups in Mali followed by Burkina Faso, France lost a grip on these countries, resulting in a diplomatic rift. Anti-French sentiments would later succeed the power grabs in Bamako and Ouagadougou, all asking the colonial force to remove itself, its institutions, and troops from their territories. Niger, after the coup on July 26, joined its Sahelian neighbors with demands. Niamey expelled the French ambassador Sylvain Ité and called for the removal of some 1,500 troops stationed in the country. These agitations cumulatively had France announce drastic actions. Experts say the latest presumable sanctions by Paris against the three countries were expected. They, however, argue that the population remain most impacted. France, however, reiterated that it will no longer issue visas for nationals of these countries without any exception until further notice.
Martisi filed that report. Meanwhile, Nigerian artists have responded to France's sanctions affecting Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, which have suspended any form of cooperation and support with French institutions. Umaru Isifu, widely known as Feno, and serving as the president of the Nigerian Association of Authors, expressed his lack of surprise regarding this decision. In his statement, Dr. Saleh Boube Bali, another member of the Writers Association, remarked that this decision underscores the perceived lack of professionalism in diplomacy, which appears to disregard fundamental values and principles. Let's head to Burkina Faso, where at least 8 civilians were killed overnight during an attack by suspected jihadists targeting a displaced persons camp in the northern part of the country. According to sources, a group of armed men on Tuesday attacked the internally displaced persons camps in Wandu. 8 deaths were recorded and around 10 people were injured. Residents said the number of victims could be higher, as several people are yet to be found. Currently, it is unknown if they were killed, kidnapped, or managed to escape. In the meantime, provisions have been made to ensure the security of the camp and the people who live there, as cited by media reports.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. NEWSLINK continues.
Now, stakeholders in Liberia and international counterparts have commenced a 2-day validation training on the draft National Maritime Security Strategy. The training is organized by the Liberia Maritime Authority with funding from the Maritime Security in West and Central Africa project. From Monrovia, WADR's Darlington Popper reports.
Speaking during the start of the event, Maritime Authority Director for Corporate Strategy John Coffey underscored the need to invest more in maritime security. He said investing in maritime security will lead to the arrest of all potential threats in the sector.
The maritime industry is one of the largest on the planet, and ensuring operation at sea continue takes determined effort. Maritime security is the protection of vessels both internally and externally. The areas from which ships and maritime operations need protecting include, but not limited to, terrorism, piracy, robbery, illegal trafficking of goods and people, illegal fishing, and pollution.
For his part, Maritime Advisor Roy Amandu emphasized the impact of the program on Liberia's maritime sector. He said over the years, the program has targeted several areas, including building the capacity of the Liberian Coast Guard.
The support to West Africa integrated maritime security is a collaborative effort between ECOWAS and the European Union, with a proud record of cooperation with Liberia. It is important to stress that SWAMS is a specific project of ECOWAS.
The exercise will come to an end today, Friday, as stakeholders attending the forum have vowed to ensure the sector is protected. For NEWSLINK on West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Darlington Popper in Monrovia.
The Guinean capital, Conakry, may today come under intense pressure as magistrates lead a peaceful sit-in protest. The demonstration by the Association of Guinean Magistrates comes after it postponed an earlier march last week. The sit in front of the Supreme Court is a reactive measure to the suspension of magistrates by the Minister of Justice. Oge Obierica reports.
Back from holiday, activities are struggling to resume in the court and tribunals across the country. On Thursday, for example, the courtrooms at the Dixon Court of First Instance were deserted, but in front of the building were several prison guards sitting on a bench with less to do. A similar atmosphere characterized several courts such as the Conakry Court of Appeal and the Kaloum Court of First Instance. But at the Mafanko Court of First Instance, activities seem to have resumed. At the heart of this crisis, which is affecting the normal functioning of the country's courts and tribunals, is the suspension of 2 magistrates on duty at the Labe Court of First Instance. Their suspension by the Minister of Justice, Charles Alphonse Wright, has been deemed illegal by the Association of Guinean Magistrates. The magistrates had been on strike for several weeks after they accused the minister of interfering in judicial decisions. According to the organizers, a memorandum will be handed to the president of the court at the sitting. The Guinean government is yet to respond to this development.
Ogiobi Erika with that report. You're listening to NewsLink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM, Dakar. Here is a reminder of our top stories. The Malian government cancels the 62nd independence anniversary following the deteriorating security situation. 3 West African countries face indefinite suspension from all cooperative platforms by the French government, including issuance of visas. Deadly attack by suspected jihadist claims 8 lives at displaced persons camp in northern Burkina Faso, and Ghana becomes the regional and sub-Saharan Africa hub for modular nuclear reactor training. Still ahead is the guest interview and sports update. Stay tuned.
WADR.
President Bola Tinubu of Nigeria has reassured of his commitment to rebuilding the nation, citing the huge and vast deposit of natural resources in all the regions. The head of state believes Nigeria has no reason to be poor. Tinubu reiterated his economic transformative agenda while hosting traditional and political leaders from oil-rich Rivers State on Thursday. The delegation from a major opposition state was at the presidential villa, Abuja, on a solidarity visit. WADR's Usman Umar has more.
Speaking to the delegation, made up of traditional rulers and high-ranking politicians of the opposition People's Democratic Party from Rivers State, President Tinubu vowed not to disappoint Nigerians, even as he encouraged them to look beyond the present situation in the country and see the bigger picture. He assured of his efforts to get the country's refineries back on stream to ensure the availability and affordability of petroleum products in the country.
Our people are expecting a lot from us. I'm not the president that will give excuses. I want to work hard for our nation, a nation united by a single purpose, development, focused, determined, make wealth, prosperity a target for all. We have no reasons to be poor.
Earlier, Rivers State Governor Siminalayi Fubara called on Nigerians to exercise patience with the policies of President Bola Tinubu for future dividends.
We know that Nigerians are expecting so much from you within the shortest possible time.
This is the first visit to the presidential villa by a governor of a state on the platform of any of the opposition political parties, with the former Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike in the cabinet of Tinubu of the APC. Speculations are ripe that in no distant time, the PDP stalwart alongside other prominent members of his party will defect to the ruling party. Should this happen, it would be a further blow to the fortunes of the PDP. For NewsLink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Omar reporting from Abuja.
Meanwhile, police authorities in Nigeria's Kebbi State have intercepted 2 vehicles conveying 7,500 live cartridges and parcels of Indian hemp worth over 600 million naira. One of the trucks was coming from Ghana through Togo and Benin Republic to Nigeria, while the second vehicle took off from Benin Republic to Nigeria, beating different checkpoints. The police public relations officer in the state, Nafiu Abubakar, said this while briefing journalists in Birnin Kebbi on Thursday, describing the arrest as huge. He said that on September 10 at about 7:30 p.m. local time, a team of police border patrol team attached to Saransa Maje Road, Bagudu local government area of KB, intercepted a container truck conveying 4,927 parcels of suspected Indian hemp. The police spokesman said that the substance was valued at over 300 million naira, adding that three suspects, Emmanuel Chukuma from Abia, Kanta Bisa from Ghana, and Shola Adeyemi from Ondo State, were arrested, while others escaped. Elsewhere, Ghana has received support for the establishment of a modular nuclear reactor (SMR) regional training hub and a center of excellence for the sub-Saharan African region. The $1.75 million in funding from the United States will support Ghana's nuclear workforce development, including the provision of an SMR control room, simulator university partnership, and academic exchanges. Through the U.S. Ghana Partnership Accra will be positioned to develop a skilled nuclear workforce for the region consistent with the highest international standards of nuclear safety. Ann Ganza is the U.S. Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for International Security and Non-Proliferation.
First is a capacity building program, and I'm very proud to announce that the United States is establishing here in Ghana a regional hub for the first program for the workforce development, university partnerships, and training of the next generation of nuclear engineers, technicians, scientists to help prepare for that nuclear transition. We are also providing a simulator for a small modular reactor control room. We'd like to talk about ensuring that civil nuclear cooperation is under the highest standards of safety, security, and safeguards. We all want nuclear power to help us address climate change. It is a clean energy source, and it needs to be part of the energy mix. Now, Ghana is in a pretty good position. You have a nuclear regulatory authority. I was very pleased your Department of Energy told me that you had a good, consistent training program for nuclear engineers and the like. So you are in a good position for this, but we are working with you to make sure that when that nuclear reactor is built, that it will be under those highest standards of safety, security, and safeguards.
And Ganza is the U.S. Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for International Security and Non-Proliferation.
Politics, analyses on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Our guest interview takes us back to Mali, where the transitional government has cancelled this year's independence anniversary over the deteriorating security situation and heavy losses in recent times. The ruling junta reached the decision this week at the end of the Council of Ministers meeting. During the meeting, Interim President Assimi Goïta instructed the use of funds meant for the festivities to assist families and victims of the series of recent attacks. The situation has sparked a debate in the sub-region, where some think the independence celebration is not a solution to the current security crisis in the country. Others believe it is a step in the right direction. Joining us on this development is Dr. Margie Peters, a regional security expert.
Well, I think this is not the first time that nations are either cancelling. They didn't cancel the independence. They cancelled marking the anniversary.
Right.
They only cancelled the celebration of the independence anniversary. And they won't be the first country to have done that. Different countries have said, we're not going to celebrate our anniversary for different reasons. Sometimes it's because the economy is really very tight, so we're going to do a low-key celebration. I mean, in Nigeria, we had those seasons as well. Sometimes when insecurity becomes very rife, you don't want to put people together and make them easy target. So I remember there was a time that Nigerian government would say we're celebrating, we're marking the Children's Day, we're marking the independence anniversary. Look, growing up, we used to look forward to those celebrations because we gather in the public square, schools have march passes. It was always a day of fun that we look forward to. After some time, that tradition died down. And for Mali, I'm not surprised that this is happening because the country is not yet stable. And it will be difficult for you to say you want to do any celebration that will bring people together, irrespective of what you do when you're planning. People who are against whatever it is that you're trying to market are planning as well. That would be just my assessment of it. And most people in their space, if I was occupying the same position with the threats and challenges, I'm likely going to do the same.
Right. Many have also argued that the cancellation of independence celebration is definitely not the solution to fighting terrorism. So what can be done instead of the cancellation of the celebration to put the country back on its feet?
I think we will be wrong to say that cancelling the celebration is not a good approach to fighting terrorism, because when we look at it, one, it could be government want to buy legitimacy. Government need to have the buy-in of the people. And if we're talking about fighting of terrorism, even in my country, when the issues of extremism was rife, government cut down on place where people could congregate, because that become very easy target for explosives and all of that. And the more you allow those things to happen, the more difficult it is for you to win the confidence of the people. I remember after the Nairobi explosion in Kenya, there were restrictions on people assembling as well. Most of this is to ensure that you don't give the terrorist group an easy target to take on people. So I think actually refusing people to congregate is another approach to ensuring that you weaken the approaches of the terrorists to instill fear in the lives of the people.
Right. Within these few days, act of terrorism in Mali has become one too many. And then there's been a rift between the government and the Azawad movement regarding the peace agreement they signed. The government is accusing the Azawad movement of violating the agreement, and the Azawad movement is also accusing the government. Why do you think there's been no agreement between these two?
It's always difficult for us to look for a short-term solution to a long-term problem. And many a times, when we're talking about areas of hostility, what we want to see most of the time is cessations of the hostility, cessations of the attacks. And that's not the solution. When the cessation of hostilities stop, when they cease, what we need to do is to look at what are those things we can do to strengthen social cohesion. The agreement that they had initially has just been for us to be on the table and for people to say we're doing a lot of things, we're trying to bring an end to. It wasn't an agreement that I suspected would last, because the processes of looking at what are your needs, what is your position, what are your interests, what is your compromise, what is the space of your concession, all of these processes were not heeded to, and they were not followed. It was like, let these things stop. What can we do? How do we move? When people are at daggers each other's neck, when people are fighting on the grounds of principles, it's very difficult for you to just sit down and just do the flipping of the coins and say everything is over. Everybody is going to be looking at it from their perspective. But when the issue of coming to an agreement, it's a process. Everybody becomes proactive to upholding that which he or she believes in. But when it is not a process, it is a condition for moving forward, you realize that a lot of people are reactive. Right now, they are all reactive to the agreement that has happened, and we hope that they are able to get professionals that will sit down and say, let's look at the whole idea of the peace treaty. How do we re-engineer it? That will go a long way in ensuring lasting peace and a more responsible agreement between the parties.
Right. So before I let go of you, let's look at the crisis in the sub-region, especially in the Sahel. As a security expert, how can we solve the security crisis in the sub-region?
If we don't don't sit down to look at what is the political future of the continent, what is happening in the Sahel might spill into other places, because a lot of people are getting fed up. Because if you're going to fight with all the insecurity along the sub-region, especially in the Sahel, you need all hands to be on deck. It's not just the kinetic approach. You actually need to do a lot of the non-kinetic. And if you're trying to bring in structures for strengthening trust and relationship, that means people, individuals, normal, ordinary citizens must buy into the whole agenda. And that means the pool of where people could be radicalized to go into issues of extremism is being impacted on, and they're being depulled. And people could see prospect and hope that things will get better for them. Unless we start looking at it holistically, militarization alone cannot solve it.
Dr. Margie Peters is a regional security expert. Up next is sports with Sankule Janko.
Hello there, warm welcome and thank you for joining us. Nigeria international Victor Osimhen has been nominated for the 2023 Best FIFA Footballers Award. This comes after the World Football Governing Body FIFA unveiled the list of nominees on Thursday. Osimhen's impressive performances at Napoli last season gained recognition by football organizations, including FIFA. Accordingly, Osimhen is the only African footballer to be shortlisted for the award. The Super Eagles forward had an impressive season with Napoli, leading them to their first league title after 30 years. He broke current Liberian President George Weah's highest African goal scorer in Serie A record along the road. He won the top league goal scorer in Italy last season after netting 26 goals in 32 league appearances for the Italian Giants. Osimhen has also been nominated for the 2020 Men's Ballon d'Or. He will be competing for the individual award alongside Argentina captain Lionel Messi, Julius Alvarez, Erling Haaland, Kevin De Bruyne, Marcelo Brozovic, and Ilkay Gundogan. Other nominees are Declan Rice, Rodri, Kylian Mbappe, and Bernardo Silva. Former Eagles superstar legend Nwankwo Kanu was the last Nigerian player to be named the best in Africa in 1999, according to media reports. And former Black Stars goalkeeper George Owu claims Ghana can win the 2023 Africa Cup of Nations AFCON if the current set of players receives the necessary motivation and support, it has been reported. Black Stars booked their 9th consecutive ticket to AFCON by finishing as winners of Group E. Although the Black Stars face criticism for their performance, the former goalkeeper Owo is optimistic about their chances. He was quoted as saying, "This Ghana team can win the AFCON with the right support and motivation from Ghanaians." Owo was among Ghana's team that made the country's first ever FIFA World Cup appearance in 2006 in Germany. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
We have come to the end of this edition of NewsLink from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Do interact with us via social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram at WADR News. We are on Facebook at West Africa Democracy Radio English Service. I am Tawfiq Abdul Nasir. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to NewsLink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Me FM 94.0, and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County. For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinions.